Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning, and we have an exciting show for you. We will be talking with New York State Senator Tom O'Mara. That's coming up in just a little bit. I'll announce who we have on the program next week. Obviously, we're going to talk about the biggest breaking story of the day. That's Donald Trump being indicted by the grand jury. We'll discuss that in just a moment. A couple little housekeeping things here. Maggie Hall from Big Fox News at 10. We had her on the program a couple of weeks ago, I think. It may have been that first week, doing a report. We have a really interesting report that she got yesterday, an exclusive with Senator Borrello, and it's about a man who was in prison for rape and murder, who has been paroled. That's in Salamanca area. But there's a fascinating piece to Maggie's reporting that you're not going to get anywhere else. So I thought I would play that. It aired last night, but I want to play that for you to highlight the great product we have here with news on Big Fox, and that's at 10 p.m. Okay, let's do a little more housekeeping. There is a number to reach me. As I said, we are going to have Senator Tom O'Mara on the program. If you have any last-minute questions, thank you to those of you who wrote in with questions. We received quite a few, and I appreciate that. It makes my job easier. But I also want to get to the stories, or to the questions, I should say, that you want to know. You want to know the answer to. So it's not too late. I will check right before he comes on the air for any last-minute questions. As we know, we're in the middle of the budget negotiations, I guess call them negotiations. The deadline was April 1st. Governor Hochul signaling yesterday that we're not going to make that budget deadline. It does not look like. So we will pick the senator's brain on that. As I mentioned, the big story of the day, and I like, in a way, how do you make the headline different? How do you talk about it differently? Everybody, and a lot of it's very biased, but the media has their quote-unquote experts, or the headlines are all kind of shockingly the same. So I do have to give Empire Report some credit here. I like their headline, Queen's Man Indicted. Hey, they're keeping it local, right? It's the Empire Report. So Donald Trump has been indicted in the hush money probe by the Manhattan grand jury. The specific charges were not made public. Some are saying he's facing over 30 counts. It depends on where you go. Vice President Pence saying it's an outrage. Many others having weighed in on this that we're going to get to in just a moment. Trump is expected to surrender to law enforcement on Tuesday. Now, if he's fingerprinted and if there's a mugshot, that will arguably probably go to be the most viral photo that you'll see everywhere. Everyone's saying unprecedented, right? That's the term we've been using for so long, really since the beginning of COVID. It's become almost tedious, but it is unprecedented because this is the first ever criminal case against a former U.S. president. Now, depending on what media source you go to, which this is the main one to go to, but depending on which source you go to, some are saying no one's above the law. See, no one's above the law. Well, I think a lot of us could argue, well, what about Hunter Biden? What about the Biden family or Hillary or whoever? But let's put that aside. Let's not even say that. That's what the one side is saying. The other side saying it is essentially a witch hunt, using President Trump's words there. So we're going to talk about what some of the quote-unquote experts had to say, what some of the politicians had to say when we come back. Obviously, this is a breaking story, and it's a big story, and we need to discuss that. But I do have other topics as well, more close to home, but also just in general. So please stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. New York State Senator Tom O'Mara will be our guest in just a little bit. He'll be zooming in from Albany. So back to Trump for just a moment. We are going to get to Maggie's fascinating news report here in a moment. But article coming again from the New York Post on this, and it's an opinion piece, but that Bragg has a bad case of bias. And there's a lot of legal experts that are saying this. some are suggesting that this is going to turn off independent voters that see this as politically motivated prosecution. That's what it seems like at face value. And this is what the New York Post editorial board is suggesting, that it is a politically motivated prosecution. Was District Attorney Alvin Bragg shamed by the ex-employee who wrote a book claiming he, quote, dropped the ball on Trump? Is he worried about getting a nice table or a nice room at the Democrat convention? Either way, Bragg is inflating a minor possible crime into a felony so he can launch his own campaign for re-election. Because you got to think about how bad this case is. The main witness, the key witness in this, is a habitual liar and lawyer Michael Cohen. Precedent shows that this is not on solid ground. If you look back at the case against, ex-presidential candidate at that point, John Edwards, remember that name? Blast from the past. Bragg, essentially, what the article boils down to is Bragg is trying to convert a state-level misdemeanor, falsifying financial records, into a federal felony. I like this part in the Post, a less self-interested prosecutor would have dropped it and maybe gone after the scourge of gun violence or the shoplifting and the robbing epidemic happening on New York City streets or New York's streets. So Democrats are giddy over this, and that's exactly how the other piece from the New York Post, Stephen Nelson, writes. They're giddy, but a lot of legal experts are saying over and over again that this is a weak case. Listen, we knew it was only a matter of time before the people that can't stand Trump would find a way to go after him. Some have wondered why it would take so long, because they've thrown everything at him but the kitchen sink, and that's why so many have the belief that he's been targeted, that he's had a target on his back from day one, because they do not like President Trump in general. They don't like the way he came up and shook up the Washington system, which they have so much faith in, which is the bureaucracy, the swamp, essentially. George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley was on Fox News, and he said Bragg is attempting to bootstrap a federal crime into a state case. And if this is the basis for the indictment, I think it's rather outrageous, and I think it's illegally pathetic. There does seem to be a bias. There does seem to be the never Trump mindset in this, the Trump derangement, the Trump hate derangement. Former Whitewater Deputy Counsel Saul Weisenberg said the question to ask yourself in a case like this: would a case like this be brought against anybody else, whether he or she is president, former president, regular citizen? The answer is no. This is preposterous, is how he finished it. So I didn't want to get too much into it, but if you have the question in your mind, is this politically motivated, I would go, or just an all-out attack. And when they say unprecedented, because he's the first ex-president to be indicted, but it's unprecedented too because of what it signals to other countries, our adversaries, and how we are misusing the legal system to go after quote-unquote enemies of certain groups, the enemies of those that dislike Trump, whether that's the Democrat Party or other factions there. Let me add my wave. You saw me wave. And just to prove this point, Nancy Pelosi tweeted. Now, they say it's an error. I don't believe it's an error. And a little inside baseball here. I don't imagine anything is tweeted by Nancy Pelosi, because we know how she is, very good at controlling the narrative. Nothing is tweeted by her that hasn't been approved by numerous people. Someone most likely wrote an idea, a sketch there. She tweaked it, other people tweaked it, and they tweeted it out. So I don't think this was an error. I think this was very intentional. She said, the grand jury has acted upon the facts and the law. No one is above the law. Ready? And everyone has the right to a trial to prove innocence. Hopefully the former president will peacefully respect the system, which grants him that right. So that tweet was approved to send out under Nancy Pelosi's name. What's the problem there, right? Well, obviously, in this country, you don't have to prove innocence. This is very troubling and a gigantic red flag of what we're dealing with in this case. Many people saying it was an error. I don't believe it's an error. Mark Levin said, Stalinist Pelosi, prove innocent? It's innocent until proven guilty. Or at least it used to be. Raises some red flags, whatever you think of that. Now we have some Trump loyalists, as only CNN could put it. Trump loyalist. That's an interesting word. A little bias there. Kevin McCarthy tweeted, the American people will not tolerate this injustice. The House of Representatives will hold Alvin Bragg and this unprecedented abuse of power to account. Steve Scalise, majority leader, said it was outrageous. Elise Stefanik saying it's a political witch hunt and a dark day for America. Yes, the precedent that it sets, and also I've got to say the message, the narrative it sends to our adversaries and foreign leaders, someone like Putin or China's leaders, what message this sends when you have a politically motivated, I'll use Stefanik's word or Trump's word, or whoever you want to give credit to, a political witch hunt. We've got to take a short break. We're going to get away from that topic. We're going to hear from Maggie Hall from Big Fox News at 10 coming up in just a moment. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio here on Market Street in Corning. Maggie Hall from Big Fox News at 10 did this great piece yesterday for the news, and I wanted to bring it to your attention in case you missed it. It's out of the Salamanca area, and it's about a convicted killer, Edward Kint, who has been in Elmira prison and is now has been paroled. A lot of questions about the parole system there. Well, Maggie had a chance to talk with Senator Borrello and do this great report. So kudos to her, and I thought I would bring it to you right now on Frankly Speaking.
A convicted murderer was released from Elmira Correctional Facility early this morning. Our Maggie Hall has the latest on that story.
Murderer and rapist Edward Kint has been in prison for over 20 years. This morning, he was released from Elmira Correctional Facility. The details of this case are graphic, and therefore viewer discretion is advised. Edward Kint was only 15 years old when he ambushed and attacked married mother of two and nurse Penny Brown while she was out jogging with her dogs. Kint proceeded to rape and strangle Penny using her own dog's leashes. Kint was arrested and charged with 9 years to life, the maximum sentence for criminals under 16.
Kint was originally going to be released into Olean, the same town in which he took Penny's life, until the town objected with outrage.
He was thankfully not released back into the community where he caused so much pain and would cause even more stress and pain. That being said, it's cold comfort because he has been released, which is a tragedy. And we're told he is in Dutchess County under close supervision. Edward Kint does not deserve to be walking free. Not only did he commit a heinous crime, a rape and a murder of a woman he didn't even know at the age of 15, he was not a model prison. In Elmira, he was caught with weapons, with contraband, drugs, and alcohol. He exposed himself to women in the prison.
The murder and rape of Penny Brown wasn't even Kint's first crime.
At the age of 13, he was convicted of raping his niece and nephew. And the parole board knew this as part of their review of his case.
Today, Edward Kint is a free man at the age of 39, the same age that Penny Brown was when Kint chose to end her life.
Maggie Hall, Big Fox News, Elmira.
All right. Thanks, Maggie. I thought that was a very interesting piece, and you can watch Big Fox News at 10 right here on WYDC TV. So we have Senator Tom O'Mara coming up in just a moment. I will be announcing who our guests will be for next week. Quite a few exciting guests coming up, just like today and just like all week. As always, it's not too late to contact me for any last-minute questions for Senator Tom O'Mara. We're going to get that Zoom powered up here because he's going to be Zooming in from Albany. So stay with us. With the budget negotiation. I can't wait to talk to him about that. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We're waiting on Senator Tom O'Mara. I know they're in Albany, and as you can imagine, a lot going on behind the scenes with that budget negotiation. So we'll stay tuned to see if he's able to Zoom in or if something came up, and we'll reach out to him in just a moment. But this gives me an opportunity because we had a lot left to cover. In general, I wanted to mention, and just to wrap up, I know I was already wrapping up on Trump, but I forgot with all the people that weighed in on this, you wonder, what about his potential challengers with President Trump? And that's specifically DeSantis. Now, he hasn't declared, granted, but boy, he's doing everything he can to make it look like he's running for president. He said the weaponization of the legal system to advance a political agenda turns the rule of law on its head. It is un-American. The Soros-backed Manhattan district attorney has consistently bent the law to downgrade felonies and to excuse criminal misconduct. Yet now he is stretching the law to target a political opponent. DeSantis also reiterated, and I think this is a good move on DeSantis' part, that he would not assist in an extradition request for Trump because Trump is a Florida resident. Yes, we know that's going to get interesting. Tuesday is going to be very fascinating. All right, good. We can get away from that. We have a couple of other things that I wanted the opportunity to mention as we wait for Senator Tom O'Mara. He just may not be able to make it. I knew it was a very busy time in Albany, and it was kind of enough to try to get it on the books. But we'll see here in just a moment. But Congressman Nick Langworthy, now I'm going to have to remember which button this is. I think I have it set up here. Congressman Nick Langworthy yesterday voted to pass H.R. 1, the Lower Energy Cost Act. Now, what does that do? Because we've been talking about energy costs on this program extensively. This is what the bill includes: increasing domestic energy production, reforming the permitting process for all industries, reversing anti-energy policies. That's a major one advanced by the Biden administration. One of the reasons we're dealing with the prices that we have been dealing with under the Biden administration. Day one, Biden signed an executive order specifically targeting domestic drilling, streamlining energy infrastructure and exports, and finally boosting the production and processing of critical minerals. Now, Congressman Langworthy had this to say: the skyrocketing energy costs that Americans and businesses have been forced to shoulder are the direct result of poor policy decisions and harmful regulations coming out of the White House. Very true. And you know, we always think of our gas tank when we think energy, but hey, it's been a common theme all week and last week too, when you receive your heat bill and how much that is costing you now. Today's passage of the Lower Energy Costs Act says to the American people that we understand the pain you're feeling, and this is the comprehensive solution to getting affordable energy production back on track. I promised I would make lowering energy costs a top priority, and I'm proud to co-sponsor and vote for this signature bipartisan legislation that does just that. Now it's time for the President and the Senate to come to the table and get this done for the American people. Now, I have my doubts that they will do that, but I give the congressman a lot of kudos and a lot of credit for co-sponsoring this bill and obviously ultimately voting for it. Something needs to be done. The American people are hurting, and this is a step in the right direction and addresses the problem that unfortunately this administration not only ignores, is actually going in the other direction, making it worse for all of us. And it adds on, you know, whether it's at the state level or the federal level. This idea that whether it's because of green initiatives or whatever the case may be, that no longer have gas stoves or gas furnaces. They put the cart before the horse. Instead of getting to this naturally by the market, they want to force it, and is ultimately costing us more and more at a time with inflation. We just cannot afford it. So I'm glad that this is on the congressman's radar. We had no doubt that it was, because he had talked about it during the campaign, and I believe we even talked about it when he was on the program last week, because it has been such a major concern, such a major conversation that we've all had about energy costs. So I'm going to take a short break. When we come back, we've got a lot more to cover. I'm going to see if we can figure out the schedule with Senator O'Mara, or if he's just too busy, which I totally understand at this time. Tomorrow, the budget is technically due. We don't believe that we will meet that deadline, but you never know. So they could be working behind the scenes. So we'll check in on him and see. I'll let you know. How about that? So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on beautiful Market Street in Corning. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live, as always, from the Hesselson's studio here on Market Street. We have, so I had mentioned Senator Tom O'Mara was scheduled to be on the program. Things are just a little too hectic in Albany with negotiations. I had a bad feeling about that when I originally scheduled it, seeing that tomorrow is the deadline for the budget. We'll try to do the best that we can to get him rescheduled in the future. I know next week is booked up, and we'll get to those interviews in just a little bit. Okay, so a couple of quick things to get to, and this was from the Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, to bring it local, and the Assembly minority. They've released their final report from the task force on school safety and security. Obviously a major concern now with what we're seeing in the daily news. The Assembly Minority Conference released its final report from its task force on school safety. What we're looking at, and some really, I think, really good moves. What they're suggesting is increasing law enforcement presence in schools. We've talked about how valuable the school resource officers are, how they become a part of really the school community. They're looking at addressing mental health issues in school, and I know after the tragedy in Nashville, a lot of people have been asking the question, and we've been asking on this program too, just in general, not just because of that tragedy, but with so much addiction. We talked about fentanyl. We have to start looking at mental health issues. We have to invest in mental health issues. When you see those on that have a certain agenda, let's say that, to instantly push for gun control. Weirdly enough, we had President Biden making jokes before he released statements on what happened in Nashville. It was very awkward, even saying that when asked if he believed this was specifically a target on Christians, because that's what Josh Hawley believes, Biden said, well, if he believes it, then no. And then he said, I'm just joking. All very inappropriate, but what you see is an attempt to try to divide us, right, and try to use this rhetoric to cause more strain on the country, which is going to tie us into a great piece here about a story we brought to you all week, which is people losing faith, really, in patriotism and religion. But that's why we need to look at mental health issues instead of instantly going for gun control, which is what the left does. And let's face it, like there was a piece I read yesterday. If he couldn't get his, assault weapons ban or whatever he calls it, if he couldn't get that through when Democrats had full power, why would he think that he could now? But he uses that rhetoric to try to divide the nation more. Continuing, open communications between stakeholders is a focus of this. Innovative state support for school safety and security. Identifying threats and providing support to at-risk students. That would be a very helpful push. Hardening infrastructure at schools. Again, this is Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, reacting to the findings from the task force on school safety and security here in New York. It is imperative said the Assemblyman, that we work to improve communications between stakeholders to develop and implement best practices and strategies to make our schools safe. I implore Governor Hochul and members of the Majority Conference to meet with us on these proposals. The safety of our children, teachers, administrators, and school personnel is of the utmost importance. This is a time for action, not a time for political posturing. These proposals, and that's a great point by Assemblyman Palmisano, and that seems to be, sadly, when a tragedy happens, we see the political posturing, and we should have time to grieve, and it breaks my heart that instead people ultimately use it for, or politicize it, ultimately. These proposals were suggested and supported by various stakeholders from our forums around the state. We must better enforce the laws on the books and work together to pass common sense legislation that will help combat this continued threat and help to better ensure the safety of our children, educators, and staff. So thank you to the minority for looking into this about school safety and security, as it is on top of mind on for so many people today. All right, we've got to take a short break. No. Oh, actually, I'm good. Am I? Yeah, I'm good. Oh, look at that. Exciting. We have plenty of time to talk this morning. If you're just joining us, I know I promoted it during the week, but Senator Tom O'Mara was unable to be on the program this morning. It just too busy of a time in Albany, and we totally understand. So I wanted to get to, let's go to the browser here. We've talked all week, and maybe even touching into last week, the sad state of affairs in this country, where people aren't patriotic. And this is according to polls. They aren't patriotic. They don't have the emphasis on religion that we used to, or the feeling that we need to support the community. It's going to lead to major problems. And I thought former Congressman Tom Reed, it's going to be a hard habit to break, former Congressman Tom Reed had a great point on that yesterday, that we've always overcome problems as a country, and we have to come back to that unity message, that pride in the country, religion. We can't turn our backs on God. That's historically been a very bad decision. Check your history books. We have to have this sense of community, this supporting the community. And I know I use that word a lot here on the program because I want this to be this program a sort of town hall for our community, to strengthen our community, where you can talk to your elected leaders, your community leaders. So we've been troubled by that poll that came out, and that's why we've talked about it so much. You know, it was a survey carried out by the Wall Street Journal. If you're not familiar, if you missed it earlier in the week, 38% of Americans say that patriotism is very important to them. Just 38%. That is down from 70% back in 1998. And I think this is troubling on so many levels, but it was almost predictable. If you look at how the media presents this country, if you look at how pop culture presents this country, and religion too, it is not in a favorable light. I used to say that, nothing would make those maybe in the media, or those on the left, scoff more than if you have a American flag bumper sticker, or you're flying the flag. And that's tragic that young people specifically, but also all of us taking the media and taking pop culture, are being told on a regular basis that this isn't a good country. And there's an amazing piece here, an op-ed, if you will, by a gentleman that they're speculating he wants to run for president. I spoke with him a few years back on my radio program. A wonderful guy, a wonderful human being. He had a book out that was really inspirational at the time, and he wrote a piece for the New York Post saying, and I agree, we need to teach Americans to hope again, not to be victims. And he says there's not enough that can be said about the power of hope. When I look around America today, I see a people yearning for it. But instead of being sold a drug of victimhood and the narcotic of despair by the radical left, but instead they're being sold, by the radical left. Something's changed. It's not the people that have changed. No, the American people still have their defining desire and passion for greatness. And that goes back to our conversation with Congressman Reed yesterday. What's changed is the message they're told day in and day out. Amen. By the leaders who can't see beyond the past. The hope isn't gone. It just needs to be nurtured and shared. The hope within the American people is still alive and well. We just need to bring it to light. And I couldn't agree more with Tim Scott. We talked about it ad nauseum, but get involved in your community, whether it's volunteering for a charitable organization, whether it's running for office. We have to build up our community. That leads to pride in not only your community, pride in your country. You can find this full piece. I don't have the time, and you don't want to just hear me read it, but it is a moving piece by Tim Scott. I will end on what he ends on. America can do for so many what it has done for me. When some choose grievance and strife, choose greatness. When others choose fear, choose faith. The future of America will be decided not despite its people, but by them. It gives you chills because there's many of us, and many of you in this audience, that feel the same way I do, that this is the greatest country, and we need to fight to defend it, that we need to do everything we can to instill this patriotism, to instill this faith. And we're the last great hope. We can't give up on it. And I'm glad that people like Tim Scott and so many others have been speaking out about it. And if you missed our interview with Congressman Reed, former Congressman Reed, I apologize, from yesterday, we discussed it at length of how important it is to never give up hope, never give up faith in this great country. So there is another piece on that, and I don't know if I have it up or not. Echoing that sentiment, which is defy the doom mongers and believe in a better tomorrow for America and ourselves. And I do want to believe in a better America, a better tomorrow for America. And this is by Douglas Murray, and he says, 25 years ago, it was normal for Americans to feel pride in their country. This country was great. I mean, look, unrivaled, dominant force in the world. Back then, in relatively recent memory, Americans were still a sunny people, proud of their ancestors and proud of the great men and women who made this country. Not anymore. For more than a generation, Americans have been taught from the schoolroom onwards that this is not a great country. And we mentioned it with the media, but I did a disservice there by not also mentioning the education in some instances, and that's what we've seen on the fights at the national level, teaching a curriculum that suggests that America isn't a great country. They're told that the country was founded in sin. This again from Douglas Murray. So we cannot lose faith. We cannot lose hope. We have to continue to fight for this great country and the values that define us. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. We had Senator Tom O'Mara scheduled for today, but again, I shouldn't have scheduled it the day before budgets are well, at least on paper, are due. So we are going to reschedule that. I just talked off the air, and we're going to get that rescheduled for you very soon. Coming up in a little bit, I'll let you know who we have on the program next week. Another great lineup. Oh, there we go. Wave number 2 today. It's a good Friday. We have a couple more national stories as we've been talking all morning. Obviously, if you're just turning on the news, you weren't watching last night or early this morning, former President Trump has been indicted. A lot of questions raised about the validity of the case, and that's something that is going to play out a lot in the media. I think it goes without saying. I wanted to remind you, I brought this up a couple weeks ago maybe, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, who we just mentioned a moment ago. He has that scholarship opportunity. It's an amazing opportunity, and the reason I'm telling you, the deadline has been extended, but only until the 3rd. So if you know someone that fits this category, it's 4 scholarships totaling it's totaling $4,000. Excuse me, I worded that strange. So 4 scholarships will be awarded, each totaling $4,000. See, I worded it strange. But 2 will be awarded based on academic and 2 on athletic. So Monday is the deadline. Really, the only rules are, is that you have to be in the 132nd Assembly District, and you can submit your application online at that website. If you have any questions, you can call the Assemblyman's office. It's an amazing opportunity. Again, I don't want to keep using that word, but it's Italian-American state legislators that are announcing this. So I just didn't want to forget. I know I mentioned it once before, but if you were thinking about it and maybe it escaped your mind, or someone you know, a child, a grandchild, bring that to their attention before it's too late. And while we're at it, since we're talking about students, and we've been talking about education a lot, since we're talking about students, let's go to this as well. Congressman Nick Langworthy, who we also mentioned earlier, has announced the 2023 Congressional Art Competition. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is the neatest thing. And if you've ever been to one of the I don't know what you'd call the award, or where you award the student that won, just the pride and the excitement. Art can be submitted to any of the congressman's offices across the 23rd Congressional District, and there's Clarence, Jamestown, Olean, Corning. They need to be submitted by the 19th. That's coming right up. Now, this is what you will win. I don't think I put that up on the... yeah, I did not. The winning student will have their artwork displayed in Washington. Think about that. In an 11-month exhibit in the Cannon Tunnel. And will also have an opportunity to travel to Washington for the exhibition and the opening celebration of their artwork. I've been down that hallway and got to see all the amazing artwork from throughout the country. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity if you're lucky enough to win the competition. In addition, on top of the winner, 1 runner-up and 4 student finalists will have their artwork displayed in the congressman's office. So still, the runners-up making it into Washington in the congressman's office. Just a little housekeeping to, I don't want to keep using that term, just a little bit of more information. Artwork entered in the contest may be up to 28 inches by 28 inches, maybe up to 4 inches in depth, and not weigh more than 15 pounds. So to find out more, go to that website there and be a part of the 2023 Congressional Art Competition. All right, let's take a short break. When we come back, we're going to wrap things up. This show went quickly. We still have a few national stories, and then we're going to highlight what's on the docket for next week. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We have a couple national stories to get to if you're joining us. I know I promoted in the morning and yesterday that Senator Tom O'Mara would be on the program, budget negotiations and everything going on behind the scenes. A little too much this morning. They're kind enough to reschedule, and I'll get you that information very soon. A couple of national stories before we wrap up. I found this really interesting because, and again from the New York Post, we're hitting a lot of New York Post articles, CBS is barring the word transgender from its reports on the Nashville shooter. You can watch it in the coverage. It's been difficult for them to, they're not sure how to address this story. And so this kind of piqued my interest. One person saying this is not journalism. Right now, we advise saying, this is from a memo from CBS, police identify the suspect as a 28-year-old Audrey Hale, who they shot and killed at the scene, and move on to focus on other important issues of the investigation, community, and solutions. CBS Insider said this is absurd because the police identified Hale as transgender. If the cops didn't address it, maybe you could avoid it, but withholding information is not journalism. And I think that's a very good point, and it's something that we mention a lot is it's really what they don't report that a lot of times is the news itself. So I think there's a fair argument to say that that's not journalism. It seems to be, I don't know if you want to say crafting a message, but not giving you all the news. It's not news at that point. And that leads to this next article. Where is it? This idea of self-censorship. We talked about it yesterday with Congressman Reed. Because once you start self-censoring, or in that case, I know it was executives forcing their employees not to mention, but if you say, well, maybe I won't say this, maybe I won't say that, they've already won in a way in this avenue of censorship. So coming from the New York Post, again, This is out of Michigan State University. Words that are not allowed, that are deemed offensive, that you should avoid at all costs. Avoid the word terrorist because it's a judgmental label. A judgmental label. I guess you wouldn't want to offend terrorists. How about this? Referring to the United States as America could be offensive. American-centric and first world language, since the Americans technically also encompass South and Central America. But these are the big ones. Words to avoid, according to Michigan State University's Inclusive Guide. Merry, as in Merry Christmas, but just merry. Christmas trees, don't use. Wreaths, gifts, reindeer. Why am I reading these all? You could probably say right there. Reindeer, bunnies, eggs, well, in the sense of Easter. Chicks, crazy, don't use that. Insane, bonkers, nuts, senile, lunatic, addict, paralyzed, and tone deaf. And one other one that's not on this list but was used, and I'm just curious, if you maybe put on a little weight, you wouldn't want to be called obese or talk about you being overweight, right? But they're saying if you have to do it, if you have to call someone overweight, I don't know why that would come up, use higher weight or larger bodied. Isn't that almost just as insulting, if not more? Put on a little weight and you're like, man, that really hurt my feelings when somebody called me overweight. Wouldn't it also hurt your feelings if someone said, man, you're of a higher weight? Boy, you're a little larger bodied. Anyway, that's how you got to be careful on the college campuses. Let's take another short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studios. Now grab a pen, grab your paper, because I want you to write down our contact information, because I am about to announce our lineup for next week, and if you have any questions for those guests, those are the best way to reach me. Whether it's text or call, text preferably, but feel free to leave a voicemail or the email. And again, I can't thank you enough for everybody who've been writing in great questions or just comments about the show. I'd always love to hear what you think about the show. So let's take a look at who we have on next week, and I think there's going to be a lot of excitement here. So Monday, Sarah Latin. She is the Chemung County Republican chairperson. She's going to be in on Monday. Tuesday, Armed Women of America, and I think her official title, it may be chair of that as well, Bobby Joe Burdick. Wednesday, Steuben County Clerk Judy Hunter, and then you see there a two-part interview, both Thursday and Friday. We are going to be talking to Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, Musicians Hall of Famer, Duane Eddy. You know the song Rebel Rouser. There's so many huge hits. That's the one that so many people point to, but hit after hit. Probably, I don't know. This is a good question. Maybe the most sold instrumentalist in the rock and roll business. If not, he's got to be close. But Duane Eddy is going to join us on Thursday and Friday. So there you go, folks. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you stay safe. And we will be back Monday morning starting at 7 a.m. with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, I'm Frank Acom. We'll see you then.